In the second part, here's a second set of frameworks that that might be helpful. And so these actually might just be frames that you think through. Maybe you have 14 that you start from, and then you sort of sort out the topics later. Here, I would say number one in this category, in this sort of part two offering, is one is sort of just general things about the organization that people need to know. Two would be a bucket of people and culture. Three would be finance. Four would be operations. Five would be programs, services, offerings. Six would be marketing communications, perhaps external relations, government affairs. And seven, revenue and fundraising. And so if you look more deeply at these, here are some of the different things that might show up in these buckets. Under this sort of first bucket, general, an organization's origin story, an office and campus tour, the organization's ecosystem, how they're operating, where they're operating within it, their special sauce, what makes this organization special, the business model, famous moments in company history, what's coming up next for the organization, the board of directors. In the second bucket here, operations, computer and network security, building security and safety protocols, digital security for a distributed team, our company and COVID, tips and tricks for navigating the building, our company service, our customer service policy or philosophy. How do we do events? How do you book spaces? How do you book, a conference room or someplace to that might not be your primary desk? People and culture, the third bucket here, introduction to benefits, paid time off and taking time off. How do you actually do that thing? When you're sick, how do you actually go through that process? Let people know that up front, so the first time they're not sick, they don't get even more stressed out about, I've never asked how to do this or I've never been showed how to do this. The hybrid workplace. Many organizations are operating under a hybrid work structure at this point. And so what does that look like? How do people know when and where to do their work and where and when their colleagues are doing their work? The org chart and leadership team structure. What does that look like? Payroll processes. When do you get paid? How do you get paid? Where to eat in the neighborhood? These are things, especially in maybe pre-pandemic, that you could learn from maybe osmosis just by being in the office and overhearing where people are going to eat. Well, that might be harder now, or restaurants might have changed. So do people eat at their desks also, or do they go to the kitchen? How we hire, our anti-racism journey. In bucket 4 of this offering, programs and services, an introduction to programs and services and offerings. What do we do? Our signature initiative or a product or our offering. Maybe if you have school programs or outreach programs and working communities, what are those? Previous programs and initiatives that you might still hear about. This becomes one of those things where people talk about this thing that maybe you don't do anymore, and maybe it inform the work that the organization is doing, but it's not on the website anymore. There's nothing really about it. So making sure people have an understanding of things that happened in the organization in order to provide that solid framework and sort of the context for the work that you're doing or the work that they're doing. Our collaborators and partners. Oftentimes we're working with other organizations and maybe we throw around the names of the organizations or the people and don't really explain who these people are. And so again, it's left to people either asking, maybe they don't feel comfortable about asking, so they just sort of go not knowing who the people are that keep getting mentioned in meetings. The finance bucket here, introduction to financial policies. How does that work? How to request payments and reimbursements. Be upfront about how to actually do this thing before someone might end up needing it, and then maybe they feel embarrassed or they didn't know that they actually could take a reimbursement for something. Internal controls. How does your finance office or the risk mitigation function operate? What's at place? Really helping people understand maybe why the policies exist. And so it's not the finance department is just being difficult, but why do we have these things in place for our organization? Contracting procedures, how to hire a consultant. What does that look like? What's that process? Who's involved? Who signs off on contracts? Our budget planning process and forecasting process. How do we actually plan for the year from a financial perspective? Traveling, credit cards, things that maybe you learn over time, but are really important to share up front so people have a sense for like what's expected when you travel. How should you go about booking hotels? Is this go on your own personal credit card or a company card, or just to get expensed? If you have financial reserves and investments, this is also a time to explore those and explain what those might be. And the sixth bucket here is the marketing communications. This could also be external relations, government affairs. Some things you might want to include here: internal communication channels. How do you use Slack versus Zoom versus email, or don't you? Do you use Microsoft Teams? Do you only use Google apps? And so this is an opportunity to explain how you use which ones you use, how you use them. A beginner's guide to marketing at the organization. Our website, our socials, which social media platforms does the organization use, which don't they use, what are the handles, how do they use them? And if you have a brand book, this is a great opportunity to include like what is our brand book, how do we use it, so that people understand what font to use, or how to use the logo, what colors is allowed versus not, and especially because some of these things might happen by trial and error, and so it saves people being like, I didn't know we couldn't use that color for our logo. I never was told. And so that would be in the sixth bucket, marketing communications. And finally is the bucket seventh in this, revenue and fundraising. Our approach to contributed revenue, if you're an organization that has contributed revenue. Gala and other events. What events do we do? Do we do conferences? Do we do seminars? Are they online? Are they in person? Are they both? If you have an organization that does an annual fundraising appeal, or if you have major donor funder or major funders, like who are these people? Who are these organizations? How do they support your organization in order to help it operate? So those are two different sort of 7-section offerings to really help dive into what should be in the core curriculum. What do you want to include? What's important for people to know in order to provide, again, that firm foundation, firm understanding, solid understanding and context for organization, for people in which to do their best work and thrive.